Hey, what's up, internet? We are on day 2 actually of the new Sentinel League, and I have found a bit of time to play actually. I played a fair bit off and on the evening of the first day, and tonight I actually found some time to stream pretty late in the evening. And it's like, I don't know, almost 3:30 a.m. my time. I'm up pretty late right now, but we did get to maps today. And I actually had a pretty decent amount of luck. I found a Poet's Pen pretty early on day 1. I found it like Chaom's Realm or something, and I don't know why. I guess people are using it to level like Corrupting Fever gladiators or champions or something. Anyway, it sold for like 60 chaos because it was so early, and that allowed me to buy quite a bit of stuff. It allowed me to buy a 5-link Iron Commander. It allowed me to buy my random splinters. I actually got like a pretty good one too. Like, yeah, 31% or something for like 40 chaos. I figured I'd grab it while getting was good, and I had all this free currency. And a lot of this other stuff was pretty cheap, like usual, right? The Carrie's Demise, even at the end of the first day, was already only a few chaos, like 4 or 5. Fractal Thoughts is never going to be more than a couple of chaos. The last thing I actually bought was my Archnemesis just before I started recording, and I was paying 4 to 5 chaos per card, the polymath card for these, and I just got it, and figured this would be about the right time to switch. I did play Explosive Arrow, just like in my guide. Basically, I played Explosive Arrow Totem from Act 3 after First Lab all the way to maps, and despite reading a lot of frustration about the new rares, I'm pretty sure I'm actually still deathless at this point. Yeah, it's 73. Not that that is abnormal, right? I almost never die during the campaign. It's been a very, very long time. But reading all the stuff on Reddit, I expected to have a much scarier time. And I did get some of the playtime in before the hotfixes, but ever since the hotfixes especially, I haven't had too much of an issue. I did just get to maps though, so we'll probably do a quick walk and talk here, since I still have Arid Lake to get out of my tier 1 maps. But I kind of wanted to record a video now that I just got to maps to talk about and show not just the transition, about the point where I would normally transition into Siege Ballista, but to talk about the rares and stuff, because that seems to be the big topic, right? Almost nobody's talking about Sentinel, which doesn't surprise me too much because there's not much going on. You just kind of summon this little guy, and the guy will buff up X amount of enemies. So you can see down in the bottom right there, I've got a little counter of how many guys he can buff. Currently he actually buffs 2 per shot, because you have a little skill tree. I'll show you here in a second. And so he's got a little bit of buffs, but that's basically it. Like, he's already out of juice. I don't have enough, or rather I don't have it spec'd to have more than one kind of Sentinel out. So if I did, I'd be able to summon a different one for a little bit different effect. But there's not much going on there, right? Pretty much the main topic for this patch seems to be Archnemesis mods on rares, and I don't blame people for feeling pretty frustrated by it. I know it's gonna get bad in things like betrayal safe houses, which I haven't had to deal with yet, or like harvest plots are gonna get pretty nasty. I'm not sure what is causing the frost walls with this guy. Oh, this guy wants to buy my... I'm gonna go on D&D for this video. The downside of doing my videos live in one shot, I guess. But yeah, I don't know how to feel about the rare mods. The Archnemesis mods sort of taking those over, because on the one hand, I think a lot of the Archnemesis mods are more interesting than the rare pool that we used to have. But I think the big issue, the most obvious issue, I guess, is that Archnemesis only made sense because we were the ones picking what we were putting on these monsters. And so there's a lot of mods in there that will, kind of like how in Expedition, there's mods that will break your build, right? Like if you make monsters immune to cold and you're a freezing pulse build, you're done, right? Like you don't get to fight them anymore. You can see these red mobs, by the way, for Bestiary are pretty tanky still, even after the hotfixes and stuff. And it's kind of a sign of how the side content having a lot of rares, I don't know, hasn't gone that well. But yeah, like, you know, it makes more sense when you're dealing with modifiers that powerful if you're choosing them, right? You can choose to make them that hard, you can tailor them to your build. But having them in the core game basically means those kind of really build damaging kind of modifiers could just be around the corner. That doesn't really make any sense to me. I'm not sure why. I mean, I know they changed some of them, but there are still mods like, you know, Droughtbringer. Mana Siphoner it has some counterplay, but it's still incredibly hard for some builds to deal with. And the price of getting your counterplay wrong against some of these monsters is just going to be instant death or near instant. Which doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't feel like the right direction for this game, which has traditionally had a serious issue with finding ways to make the gameplay challenging but still give you time to react, right? This feels like the exact opposite direction. It kind of reminds me of back in the day when you would have Reflect as a rare mod, and if you weren't Reflect immune or something, you just kind of never knew when you were gonna die, right? You couldn't play those kind of builds on hardcore because, you know, they had an expiration date of whenever an invasion boss that had Reflect happened to spawn on your map. So yeah, I haven't had too many issues with them. I feel like this build has a pretty good time with Archnemesis modifiers. None of them are too dangerous for us. There are some annoying ones people have hard times dealing with, but we just, between freezing enemies, keeping a good distance, taunting monsters with your totems, and not being overly reliant on anything. We also get Frost Bomb, you know, in our build, and that is a huge boon for enemies that have lots of rejuvenation. Like anything that has a lot of regen, especially when these monsters spawn with additional things like essence modifiers that can have really high regen, right? Or well, anything that gives them additional modifiers beyond standard rares. Being able to have stuff like Frost Bomb is a really big benefit. So thankfully we're kind of avoiding most of the nasty downsides of, you know, build destroying Archnemesis modifiers, but it does feel like in their effort to try and make rares more interesting, they've probably gone to, you know, there's been a bit of an overreach here in terms of overhauling all these rares, rare modifiers all at once, and we'll have to see how it shakes out. They've already nerfed them twice by the time you're seeing this video. They've reduced the average number of mods down by 1, so like the average monster only rolls 1. They can roll up to 3 still. I think there's still going to be issues with any kind of side content that has really high volume of rares. Like, be really careful with Ritual, be really careful with Harvest in particular. Harvest is probably like some of the nastiest map content in the game still. If you hit like really buff roll crabs, I don't know if you know what I mean by roll crabs, but like they're just like weird crab looking guys that do like roll attacks at you. I mean, if they spawn with 3 Archnemesis modifiers on top of the map mods, on top of the Harvest mods, like you'll probably just die before you understand what's happening. So be really careful with those. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I kind of want to talk about, and I'm probably going to continue to talk about as I make whatever videos I have time for this league, is the controller support. You can probably tell that my UI is the controller, like the console UI, because they have implemented controller support into this game. And I gotta tell you, while I'm sure this is gonna vary from build to build, I am loving having controller support for a build like this, because you know, we don't really have any precise aim going on. I don't really care where my totems, you know, I drop my totems at my feet, so there's not a huge issue with the totem just kind of dropping. I don't need to aim those, but there's actually some auto aim implemented. So for things like, you know, my frenzy shot here, or especially my sniper's mark, I'm manually casting that, and I'll probably manually cast it for a very long time. That was always a little bit annoying on mouse and keyboard because, you know, when you have a mouse cursor and you're running around, you kind of had to, like if you were fighting, you know, Cirrus or Uber Elder or something like that, it'd be really sharp with your cast, and if you did something like this and cast, you would actually cast onto the ground. There was no, like, you know, radius of auto aim with mouse and keyboard, and I would actually miss quite a bit, I feel like, dealing with things like Uber Elder, like I said, Cirrus, anything where I had to be really mobile and I couldn't, you know, I had to focus on dodging and staying alive. I would whiff a lot. With this, as long as I'm like facing the target, at least in cases where there's only like one boss or you know, Cirrus or something, it'll just hit it. It'll just auto target it for me. And it's the same way with Frenzy. Even when I'm mapping, I just kind of have to point generally in the vague direction of any enemies, and I'm always gonna get hit, which is nice for making sure that my Frenzy stacks. I don't really have to pay any attention to it. So I've actually found it really comfortable to play on a controller. My biggest issues right now are navigating the UI. There's a lot of small things about the UI that I think need to be changed on controller. The first and the biggest one is the functionality of the A button. Currently, I have nothing assigned to A, specifically because it does so many things, right? Like, I have to click on, you know, shrines with A. I've got to loot with A. I don't want to put a key there. The problem is that even if I don't have something assigned there, it'll still sort of behave like it wants to auto-target enemies with whatever I might have put on A, even though I have nothing on A. And I find this really aggravating because it stops you from doing things just like drive-by looting like this. You can't do that if there's anything anywhere on the screen, like in that general direction, because you'll go to hit A and it'll see that enemy over there and it'll target them with nothing, right? And it's especially obnoxious with things like shrines or strong boxes that have enemies around them, because you just usually want to run up and click it and then get away, but it'll take you like, you know, 4, 5, 6 presses because there's some enemies nearby. I find this super obnoxious, and I really wish that they would just change it so that if this button is not bound, like if I have this button empty on purpose, unbinding it should allow me to give priority to all of my interactions instead. Like, there's no reason for me to do auto-target an enemy with nothing. I really, really want that to get fixed because it is super obnoxious. And it makes the... It's like the only problem with the in-map gameplay, I feel like. And it's easily fixable to just make it so it always does interaction type stuff if I don't have anything bound. The other is just the general like interface. There's a lot of small things, like if we go to a town really quick, we'll go to like Oriath Docks. The A button here likes to target players, and unfortunately like the very first thing on the menu is invite to party. And so a bunch of times I'll do this and I'll go to click my stash and I'll get this. Like I'm gonna click on one of the many people that are obviously also gonna be near the stash, and I'm gonna invite them to a party on accident. And there's no like fast way to undo this. I have to go in here, go to the social screen, go over to the create a party, and then kill this before he accepts the party, you know, and then gets confused, right? This is really also really annoying. I don't even think the A button should be able to interact with players in towns. I think that needs to be moved to like X or a D-pad or something. If it's going to stay that way, maybe it could be a press and hold function if I want to deal with players, or at the very minimum, don't make invite to party the first thing on this menu. Like if you're going to have a context menu, go ahead and move whisper here. Move invite to party down here under report, right? So just move this whole chunk right here and move this block of 4 up to the top. At least like if I set whisper, I'm not going to actually do anything, right? And I can just back out. I would much rather that I just don't have to interact with players with the A button, but if I am going to, don't put invite to party as the first thing. I've accidentally invited probably 20 people to parties trying to level through the axe, and I don't think it's going to get any better until this functionality is changed. The only other thing right now on my mind about controller support is I really wish that it would change on the fly. This is something that I'm surprised wasn't part of their their sort of core imperative for controller support, because it's, you know, we did it on Marvel Heroes and they did it in Diablo 2 because it's like the most natural request, I think, of anybody that wants to play on controller on PC, is to be able to just, I'd much rather come to my stash, put my controller in my lap for a second, and do all this with my mouse, right? But I can't, or for some reason I have a mouse cursor, and I can do some things with this mouse, but I can't interact with my inventory at all. I can't do anything. I can change my tabs, but for some reason I just can't interact with this. And navigating the interface, like the inventory interface with the controller, has proven pretty slow so far. It's okay with this kind of stuff, but like here's a pretty good example of one of the things that makes this really hard. For some reason, when I don't have anything in my hand right now, I can still mouse over all these empty slots with my cursor. Like, what purpose could that possibly serve, other than to make it excruciatingly slow to move through this? Like, I could use the right stick to hit the extreme ends of my inventory, which kind of helps, and it also jumps between the left and the right side. But like, why can I navigate to these empty slots when I'm not holding something? If I was holding something and I wanted to play Tetris with it or move it to a specific slot, I would understand. But when I don't have anything in my inventory, or like anything in my active hand, my cursor hand, I should only be moving to squares that have inventory in them. It would increase the efficiency of navigating especially your inventory on this side by like so many times, because I wouldn't have to pick this up and then have to hit this right twice or anything. Does that make sense? Like, it should just go over there, you know? Or if this was over here from looting in the map and I had stashed all the small bits here and I was here, it should just snap over to here. There's nothing here but vacuum, right? This is all empty space. So being able to navigate it when I'm not like actively trying to move an item, it really has slowed things down, and it really bothers me. And it's only, I think, really bothers me because I can't just grab my mouse and click it into my stash, right? That would be a fine solution. I don't care about this if they allow me to, on the fly, go ahead and switch back to my mouse. And I don't really need the UI here because I can scroll. I don't need my PC UI for this. It's something I really, really hope that they change, because it would be the dream, I think, to be able to go into the map, play with the controller, come to my stash really quick. Like I said, just put it in my lap, or put it on my desk, quickly do all my stash. Especially when I come over to things like the crafting bench, using this is really miserable with a controller. I feel bad for console players. I really want to just grab this and do stuff with my mouse. Thankfully, the actual gameplay itself feels really, really smooth. So if they just iron out a couple more things, I feel like this will actually be my preferred way to play, at least for some builds. I'm sure there's, you know, other builds that wouldn't feel as good. Anything where you gotta precisely target spells or ranged attacks probably feels pretty bad. But if you've been on my channel for a while, you know that I don't exactly... I'm not known for playing a whole lot of builds, so right now I'm pretty happy with the controller support in general. And I hope they continue to tweak it and improve it. Well, yeah, I think I'm going to wrap this video up. I just kind of wanted to kind of get back into the swing of things with a league start progress video. And I have found some time to play, so I figured I would give people an update on where I'm at. I'm pretty set to just start map progression, I think. Obviously, I'll probably get some temple gloves here and start looking for some eldritch implicits to put on my temple gloves to last me for a while. And I gotta get some new jewelry for sure. Like, this thing's pretty junk. This is pretty bad. I'm sure my belt is pretty bad. Get my flasks fixed, but Hiri's Ire is pretty much the last thing I want to get. The main piece. And then I can pretty much just cruise for a while. I might just get a wild wrap until I can afford a Hiri's Ire. But yeah, I think that'll do it. Next video, I'll see when I have time. Hopefully tomorrow, maybe I get some map progression, and we'll talk about like Atlas strategies. What is it? Left stick plus up on the D-pad. It's pretty awkward. But yeah, I'm probably gonna go up the left side. I'll probably go back into Temple. I'm going to turn off some stuff like Breaches, Abyss. Probably not an Expedition. Maybe Expedition. I don't really like doing it. But turn off some stuff here. Get my map bonuses. Maybe even come over to Spoils of War, despite the fact that rares are dangerous. But we'll see. I'll talk about that more once I've decided what I'm going to do. But anyway, if you do want to check me out whenever I can stream, you can find me at twitch.tv/WallachTV. And I'll see you guys here in the next video. Peace.